Control what you could control. You can't control the weather. You can control your actions. You can control your reactions. That's where the power is. Everyone's given a different set of tools. You have to figure out how to use them.
Hey, how you doing?
What's up, man? Blessed. How you doing, man?
All right, Mike here. Welcome to the Solo to CEO podcast. We're sitting here with Mike Dube. Mike, tell me what you do, or one of the million things that you do.
So I do a lot of things. I'm blessed that I'm one of those individuals whose career and calling is definitely aligned. Professionally, I have a private coaching company that builds confidence and self-esteem for kids, especially in today's day and age. It's not easy to be a kid. I feel like I'm that big kid at 50 years old who finally has peace of mind and wisdom and insight.
Right, so, being a kid is not for everyone.
No, I think there's some cliche that talks about that youth is wasted on children, which is true to a degree, but we become wiser, obviously, as we get older. So I'm fortunate to have my private coaching company, Elite Method. I do a lot of life coaching for kids and a lot of life coaching for adults. And I spend a lot of time on a charity that I help build called Sharing Seats, which gets tickets and creates experiences and events for families who have kids with special needs, cancer, people going through challenges that I never want to know from. On top of other things that I'm involved with, other interests. I'm one of those guys who makes the most of every day. I live in the moment, I'm in real time, and I take nothing for granted, including this podcast.
Oh, amazing. I appreciate that. So how'd you get into this coaching thing to begin with?
Always, since I was a child, I was always selling something one way or another. It wasn't necessarily converting it into anything, but I was always selling. From the time that I was 15 years old, I was selling Cutco knives and approaching people and telling them, the importance and why they should buy these knives, to other always working and waitering, catering, and always had money in my pocket, even in college. Then was involved with a company called IDT out of college I worked for when they were selling long distance carrier, WorldCom, and access to the internet, which seems like another generation ago. After that, I got involved with my family business. We had a psychiatric daycare center, an outpatient mental health clinic. So I dealt with the hardcore mentally ill. I dealt with the type of individuals that one would cross the street when they saw them. But I treated them like the most important people around. Wow. And we built a successful business for 13 years. And then my parents and they decided really to sell, and they retired. And then at 35 years old, I had to make a decision what my next step was going to be.
Did you need to go through any sort of specific schooling to do this practice?
No, well, I graduated from Yeshiva University. I was a speech major. And I tell people in life coaching all the time, the degree that you have is not necessarily going to be the field that you go into. They say that if you're fortunate enough to love what you do, then you never work a day in your life. I agree and disagree with that because hard work and discipline is probably the two most important things to be successful, along with vision in other areas. So I didn't know where my final end up would be. At 35 years old, I decided to, with the help of my wife, who's also my partner, that to get involved with kids' sports. I was always very athletic as a child. I was that kid who was usually picked first, second, third, or fourth, and if I wasn't, I generally quit. I was that kid that kids wanted to be on their team in sports because they knew the output that I was going to give them.
But they hated you.
But they didn't like me because of the way that I acted on the court. And as we all know in life, in today's day and age, it's a recipe for disaster for people to not enjoy winning and not knowing how to lose. So I took all that and started after-school programs called Dube Zone, where I was running phys ed in a few different schools, and then ran after-school programs. But Dube Zone's motto was strong character, strong bodies. So it was important that for sports that you built kids up the right way, instead of the uber-competitive sports that are out there, where parents push their kids and the kids end up generally wanting to quit.
How did the Dube Zone work?
So we did after-school programs in 10 to 12 different schools. We had coaches that would run after-school programs. We kept it a very smooth flow in terms of the importance of stretching and teamwork and showing skills and drills and then executing within the game. The reality is that within sports, you really get better when you practice, not when you're playing.
Exactly.
So Dube Zone then, after about 10, 11 years, sort of hit a peak. And then as a businessman, I had to make a decision as to what the next direction was. Through Dube Zone, I developed a private coaching business where we build up kids' confidence and self-esteem, really polished that business, and then that led into Elite Method, which is currently what I'm involved now, which It's really focusing on life coaching for kids, confidence and self-esteem, but focusing on mental, social, emotional, everything that every kid needs and parent needs. And hence, we develop a partnership with the parents to try to produce the best product of a child. We try to make them shine wherever they are.
So how does the Elite Method work? What's the structure?
So the structure is now, as we built it up, and we're always refining and fine-tuning. Any business that you're involved in, there's no such thing as being complacent. Because the second that you're complacent, then that's generally the time that your competitor is passing you. We've created a one-of-a-kind type of business. It's not just sports. It's focusing on social, emotional, physical. Generally through word of mouth, we built a strong reputation up there. We have a team of coaches that we sort of partner with the right child based on what their dynamic is. Every single kid is different. Every kid is wired differently. And I tell parents all the time, never parent any kid the same. Every kid comes with their own set of instructions. We develop a relationship with the child. Generally, the coach will see them once a week, 60 to 80 minutes, and we make them own their stuff.
Is this done virtually, or you have clinics?
It's all face-to-face, one-on-one. I think there's nothing like the power of being face-to-face with somebody.
Absolutely.
Where you could read the entire dynamic of a person. Once the pandemic happened, I went Zoom the next day. It's very tough to capture somebody's attention, especially a child, over Zoom. I was able to, thank God, convert right away to Zoom, and then things came back to in person. But I don't think there's anything more valuable than being in person with somebody. And the one-on-one methodology is the most successful, especially because every single kid is different. I mean, think about kids that are in school, 20 different kids in a classroom. The teacher teaches one way, 5 kids get it, 5 kids don't, 10 kids are trying to figure out when class is over. So the one-on-one power, just like with this podcast, is very, very powerful because you really get to see the essence of a person. Also,
the not just the one-on-one power, but also the in-person aspect. It translates, in every area of your life. I mean, we could have done this. I live in Israel. I live in Beit Shemesh. I could be there on my computer doing this over Zoom, but I actually flew in to interview people face to face because it's incomparable.
Right, which is great because there is nothing's ever going to replace that human connection. There's a certain energy that you pick up when you're talking to somebody. Body language, I speak to kids about that all the time, about the importance of body language. Why, when your hands are like this and your parents are talking to you, it sends a bad message. Thank God, I love sports. I love all sports. People always say, what's your favorite sport? Well, basketball was probably my favorite because I played college basketball, played my entire life. As a matter of fact, I just played with my son yesterday, and I'm 50 and he's 19. So, full transparency, I am a little tight today, but Adam, I'm in pretty good shape, thank God. But
did you beat him?
I came in second. It doesn't matter. We weren't so much playing for a win and a loss. It was more the enjoyment that I'm lucky enough to be able to play full court with my son. And of course, that's very enjoyable to me and injury-free. And a lot of clients that I work out with, especially kids, it's so important to focus on the form and safety end of things. And the benefits of working out and staying in shape far surpass anything in today's day and age with kids and technology and social media. Kids are becoming less and less interested unless you make it fun. So I'm fortunate that I was that kid who really loved sports, who was able to parlay it into a career and a business. And sports is life. Every analogy within sports comes up in life. And,
Give me an example.
Everything in sports, a work ethic, for example. Kids think that they get better by playing PlayStation or by shooting 3-pointers. No, you get better by sweating it out in the gym, working out when nobody's looking. Well, they say that your integrity is who you are when nobody's looking, along with your character. So within sports, it's when nobody's looking, when you're working out, when you're in the gym, when the lights aren't on. That's how you improve in anything that you do. The best time that I have is generally when I get to think about myself. And luckily, because thank God for Shabbos, I get to disconnect from the world, to get to focus on me. So many people are not in real time these days. They're thinking about what's next, what's in the past. And you got to think about right now.
Awesome. So that's a pretty good analogy, the work ethic, because people, especially nowadays, people aren't, naturally prone to sweating things out. It's usually, the easy route, especially like you're saying, the PlayStation. What's another analogy? I'm interested.
Well, I think one of the most important things is grit. All these small things which you hear, these catchphrases, are so important. Teaching you, I didn't have it easy by any means. 10 years old, my parents were divorced and my mom was with 3 boys. That wasn't easy by any means. And I always looked around. Why is this happening to me? How come they have more than us? Instead of looking within myself. And then eventually, as you get older and you evolve and you grow and you mature, you realize that the most rewarding thing in life is starting at home. I have a lot of friends who started on third base. And I don't know if you're a baseball fan, but when you start on third base, it's not that tough to make it to home plate. So I have so much respect for self-made individuals.
Your practice primarily with teens?
It varies. I've worked with kids as young as 3 years old. Once I work with a child, I make an investment in the family. So I'm telling these parents exactly the way it is. And I've dealt with hundreds, if not thousands of kids privately. And I've gotten to see every aspect of a child. Now, granted, I have my own kids. I'm blessed with a 19, a 16-year-old, a boy and a girl. And I don't parent either of them the same. But I always make sure that my wife and I are always, intertwined in front of the kids. It's so important that you're same page, especially with the kids. Your teammates. And I could say that after being married 21 years. Thank God. It takes work. Work is a real thing. And some people are scared of the day before it even starts. My attitude is when I wake up, there are a few things that are givens every day. If I don't do an act of kindness, an act of chesed every day, I did not do my part in the world. Giving is a part of me. But we live in such a taking world. iPhone, I this, I that. And it's scary because social media and technology has really had a major impact on this generation in a negative way. When I grew up and I didn't know a word and I didn't have the strongest vocabulary, when I was in college, I used to carry a 5-pound dictionary around with me whenever I didn't know a word. Today, a kid wants to find out anything, Google, button, press.
And now we have ChatGPT, so you don't really have to do anything either.
You don't need to do anything. So, Albert Einstein coined it properly. He said that when technology supersedes human interaction, we're going to create a generation of idiots. I don't want to go public and say what that is, but I see it on a lot of levels. Pandemic didn't help. And kids today, they're so exposed to what's going on TV and social media. The world does not want you to be you. I'm the opposite. I try to bring the best version out of every kid where they're at. Not to try to change them, to polish them. And I see it all. So that's why I'm glad that I can be so real with people. And anyone that knows me over a decade of close to 5 decades.
And everyone knows you.
Everyone knows me. And what you see is what you get. I always say to parents, when they're talking about their child, because that's their greatest asset, obviously, and their legacy. I said, do you want your coffee black or with sugar? I can give it to you however you want. You want me to sweeten it up? That's fine, but it's not going to be the reality. And, telling it the way it is very cathartic. To just tell people the way that it is instead of
we're going to
dancing.
get a dictionary on that one.
Yeah, it's a good one. Cathartic. Again, I definitely built up my vocabulary, but I also...
What does cathartic mean?
Cathartic means providing psychological relief through the open expression of strong emotions, causing catharsis.
Interesting.
Right. See, how easy was that?
Imagine having that in college, huh?
Yes, it would have changed the game. I had to struggle.
A lot lighter than the dictionary.
I had to struggle through, but thanks to all the challenges that I had, and still always work through, that makes me the best version of me. So I'm very fortunate. Also, I'm fortunate that I see stuff on a daily basis through my charity, which is scary just reading the emails of the challenges, the real challenges that people have. Sick children and people with cancer and people with mental illness and depression and abandonment issues, you name it. So 95% of my day, I'm on the other end of giving advice and insight. So I figured out ways how to bring out the best version of Mike Dube every day, whether it's physical, whether it's spiritual, whether it's emotional. And I go from early till late. And I don't go a day without not returning a phone call or a text, even if I don't want to.
As a business owner, what are some things that you would say you learn from these people that are struggling with illness?
I always say to people on a lot of different levels, especially being very involved in the community and on a micro and a macro level, that support the causes that you never want to know from. Some of these organizations that I deal with, which deal with, cancer and other life challenges for sick kids and stuff like that. Support those organizations. Create that type of karma and energy in the world. It's tough because everyone has, I think it was Robin Williams that said it, who's no longer around, that everyone's fighting a battle that you know nothing about. Recently I had a story with a woman who I see in Dunkin' Donuts every day, and I get my coffee. I asked her that question that nobody wants the answer for. How are you? She said, terrible. So right away, a person has to make a decision when you hear that. Do I want to deal with that person's challenge or just wipe it under the carpet? Most people want to wipe things under the carpet.
So dealing with a lot themselves.
Correct. So what did I do? Thank God my glass is full. I got her a gift certificate through my charity, Stop and Shop. We sent the kids to a Dream Day at American Dream. I then used it as a conduit for other people to do good, and people dropped off Lego and other things. So I'm fortunate that I'm able to inspire people. I do my fair share of public speaking, but inspiration has to be backed up by action. Because as we all know, especially in business, talk is the cheapest thing in the world. Action is what it's all about. I think it's in Ethics of Our Fathers. Daber ma'at aseh harbe. Speak a little, do a lot.
Yeah, we all fail in that one.
Most people fail because most people are very, very content with mediocrity. I spoke to a guy at the gym a few months ago who lost 120 pounds. And I said to him, what exactly was that golden ticket? What was the motivation that got you to lose that weight? He said, I used to walk into public places and people would stare at me. And I was sick and tired of people staring at me. So he decided to change his life around. He ended up getting a gastric bypass surgery, ended up working out. Now he's OCD about working out. And I spoke to him and I said to him, what's the best feeling that you have right now after putting in all that time and effort? He says, nobody notices me. I walk into a room and I'm just part of the crew. A lot of people try to create these artificial things of how people are. Manage your expectations and you will be much, much happier in life. I know whenever I've set my expectations up, count on somebody, rely on them, it never ever happens. So you manage expectations, you become a lot happier. Plus, happiness is from the inside, not the outside.
And how does that translate itself in business, the managing expectations? How would you?
You can't expect anyone to operate at the frequency that you do. It just doesn't work that way. I'm blessed that I have a very high energy level. But when I'm done, I'm done. So that means after a full day, when I'm sitting on the couch and relaxing, it's game over. You got me about 10 minutes before I'm in another planet. So I'm just very proactive. I'm not into wasting time, ever. It translates into that because, what do they say? When you want something done, you go to a busy person.
I've heard that one.
And it's very, very true. But nobody is too busy. And I'm fortunate that through not only professionally, but in my charity, I've created a conduit for people to do good. And people want to do good. You just need to put it in their plate. It needs to be a drive-through. It needs to be an app. You need to make it easier. So whenever I get requests all the time for my charity, I have a wait list of people that want to sponsor because it's easy to write a check. A lot of times when I do chesed projects with kids and parents like, well, I want to write a check for this family. Like, I know, but what's your kid going to learn? Parents need to display the behavior that they want their kids to emulate. Kids do what they see, not what you say.
Yeah.
So that's a very, very important thing. And you got to lead by example. Don't tell somebody to do something if you're not willing to do it yourself.
Right. This translates also, when you hire people and you tell them to do a certain thing, but they see you doing the opposite.
Manage the expectations. Very, very important. Nobody is ever going to do it the way that you do it. And it's true. Slow and steady wins the race. That's what I've seen in life. Any guys I know in business that got quick hits and quick fixes, it generally does not last.
Can you expound on that?
Well, guys that I know that were involved with different opportunistic opportunities of, within COVID, where guys were in certain businesses and they struck it rich.
The COVID businesses.
Correct. I know one or two guys that monetized on it and were able to scale into a business. When I spent a few years in the foreclosure business, when, the world was in a crazy place, I saw it also with people. They overextended. Live within your means. If you can't afford it, then don't buy it. That's an important thing. I mean, and things don't make people happy. That's short-term happiness. The number one thing I've noticed in the world is when you help people, you feel good. That's a real feeling. When you work out, you feel good. When you're there for others, you feel good. You provide that type of support. That's crucial.
And that feeling lasts as opposed
That
to
feeling lasts. Plus, it reverberates. And that's why I'm fortunate that when I get requests, I empower other people to do good. And then I get that feeling. Plus, it creates a certain amount of karma in the world, which is very important. Whether a person believes or not. I mean, I'm all in. You know, through all my life experiences and everything that I've seen, there's no question that there's a source above. You know, the sun doesn't just come out every day. Stars, the moon, the grass, nature. So, you know, I think it's important, you know, when I break it down professionally with people, you know, we focus on a few different areas. We focus on the physical, obviously, the social, the emotional, the mental, and the spiritual. Those are the 5 keys. Jimmy Valvano had said that there are 3 things, and he was a great coach at NC State, probably before your time. He said there are 3 things that you need to do every single day. Laugh, smile, and cry.
okay.
I'll add in think. If you do those 4 things every day, I think it's really more cry, laugh, and think. You've had a full day. And it's only 12:30 and it's already been a full day. But I got a lot of hours left in this day to accomplish and to get things done. And then there's the unexpected. As you get older, you realize life could change in a millisecond. Now, you're one phone call away from a challenge or a tragedy. You're one email away from something going wrong or sour.
Or the opposite.
Or the opposite, correct. That's why it's important to be grounded. You know, the most respect I have for guys are the self-made guys. The guys that sweated it out and figured it out. And success is not always defined by monetary gain or monetary benefit. I know many wealthy people who are miserable. Now, why are they miserable? They have the resources. Because happiness stems from within. Today's day and age of 2023, all these self-help books, all these things, they're only as good or as serious as the person is about wanting to change, about wanting to better themselves. I want to be a better human being tomorrow than I was today. You're not guaranteed anything in this lifetime. Maybe death and taxes. Right? I figured out what the key is to happiness. I figured it out. You know, in Hebrew it says, Yishavadas, peace of mind. I have it. Doesn't mean I don't have challenges. But you can't give to others unless your glass is half full. Giving yourself, providing yourself what you need to become the best version of you. Whether it's getting up in the morning and praying to God, or working out, or doing an act of kindness, whatever it might be, then you're much more of a well-prepared individual for the day. There's some people that look outside, it's rainy and nasty out, and they're like, this day is going to be crappy. Or you could take the approach of like, hey, I'm going to make the most of what the day is. Control what you could control. You can't control the weather. You can control your actions. You can control your reactions, right? That's where the power is.
You can't control the tools that you're given, but you can control how you use them.
How you use them. Everyone is given blessings. Everyone's given a different set of tools. And you have to figure out how to use them and when to use them. It's not an easy world out there. That is a ferocious world out there that does not want you to become the best version of you. My goal is to figure out how to create the best version of every person that I come in contact with.
And how do you do that?
By validating them. I always do all the time, no matter where I'm at, a social event, work event, I always ask somebody their name. It could be a waiter at a restaurant. Because once you validate a person, you've now developed a human connection. Instead of, oh, that's my waiter. Once you ask somebody their name, you've now interacted human being to human being. And don't forget, there's a big difference between a human being and being human.
Go on.
We're all human beings, but what about the person at ShopRite who checks you out every week? How about ask her how she's doing or how her world is? Again, most people are not prepared. They don't want to hear the answer.
Yeah, in most cases, when someone comes up to you and says, how you doing? And you're like, do you really want to know? They'll be like, you know, no one's used to hearing
They're not interested, generally. So when people ask me how I'm doing, I transferred my verbiage from thank God to blessed. Now, do you think when a random guy, you ask him how he's doing, he wants to tell you, or more important, that you want to listen? So I'm blessed and fortunate that I have a great life, had my fair share of challenges along the way, and I still have challenges, but a person's goal is to, A, figure out how to be the best version of you, number one. And number two, how do I make the world a better place? You don't need to be great to do great things. You know, just like in sports, athletes have such a platform to do so much good. They're entertainers. That's what they do professionally. But what about what they do on the side? Their give back, their charity. I always get most depressed in football when you see the Walter Payton Award, because it's given out to the athletes that are the most giving back to society. And I met so many athletes, they're all the same to me. It's the power of influence that they have. I'm always just trying to figure out how to be the best version of myself in a world of 8 billion people. Yes, you can have an impact. And I was fortunate a few months ago when I was at the Net game with my son wearing that Fight Anti-Semitism shirt. And
Yeah, tell us about that story.
Look, because I deal with a lot of tickets and kids, you know, I rarely get to go to games myself because I'm just too busy. And I'm not really so interested. And one of my buddies, who's a big donor to the charity, you know, saw that there was a lot of heat going on in the NBA with Kyrie Irving and a movie that incited hate. And they were season ticket holders. And they said, hey, we have 6-8 people going to the Barclays Center to sit courtside. I said, sounds great. Would you like to bring your son? Of course. And would you wear Fight Anti-Semitism t-shirts? I said, sure, my pleasure. My son was a little nervous. I said, you got to wear it if you want to sit on the court. And put on a big white yarmulke. Was proud about my heritage. And it became a message heard internationally. For 2-3 weeks after, I was doing interviews on TV. And my message stayed unified. It was, you know, we got to spread love, not hate. And, you know, an athlete that has more followers than there are Jewish people has a big power of influence.
Absolutely.
And most people in society are sheep. They follow the herd. That's just not the way that I was built. And I'm glad that it got a lot of airtime. I was happy with my life before. I was happy afterwards. It put a real issue about race and hate out there. And then time moves on. It was a moment in time that was heard around the world, and we didn't say a word. Well, the scriptures talk about that. The silence is golden, right? So I got to really make an impact, and I got to be a voice for our people.
Incredible.
Yeah, it was really very, very impactful. It'll be one of the life memories out there. For 2-3 weeks, I wasn't sleeping well. It was very challenging because I felt like I had the world on my shoulders. And people were very, very supportive. We used social media on a lot of different levels, and it was heard around the world. So I'm very, very happy about that. The message was made. The message was completed. And like they say in show business, on to the next.
Exactly. On to the next. So let's go back to the growth of Elite Method.
Yeah.
Where's Elite Method holding today? How many of you guys do you have working under you?
Well, thanks to, Rachel, my wife and partner, and Rebecca, we have a strong group of coaches that are working in the New York and New Jersey area. When we've dealt with coaches our entire life, I've seen the best and the worst of them. So we really have handpicked our coaches who really have a great understanding of the message that we're trying to convey through Elite Method. In any business, it's always in a growth process. You're always in a fine-tuning process. And, we continue to grow and have an impact. But there are struggles like in every business. In any business that you see, you never see what's behind the scenes. When you watch a commercial on TV or a movie, nobody understands how much goes into that. And in today's day and age, it's all about marketing. How could you get your message across in a commercial in 25 seconds? On Instagram, on TikTok, and that's where the generation is. That's why you see these instant success stories. But generally, when they say something is too good to be true, it's generally not. You know what? I always tell people, you want everyone to like you? Be an ice cream man. That's how everybody will like you. But they have their struggles also. I became friendly with an ice cream man that says winter's challenging. Brings a lot of smiles to everybody in the summer and spring. But again, every business has its challenge. And even when you think you're there, you're not. You always have to look around the corner. You always have to be creative. I think that's one of the most important aspects in business. First of all, know your customer, number one. Number two, to be creative. And for anyone in the workforce out there, It's not enough a 9 to 5 everything. It's all about added value. How do you add value to what you're involved in anything that you do, right? You can bring flowers home for your wife and dump it on the table, or you could put a small note saying, I love you and I appreciate you.
You started this elite method on your own? This was something that you were just
It was
coaching
started
people
through
on?
myself and Rachel and Rebecca. Rachel's my wife, and Rebecca's been with us for 12 years. She's invaluable in terms of everything that she does with us and within the day-to-day. And it evolved through Dube Zone, through another business that we had that was in the same genre.
Right.
We took one of the most successful components out of it, and we were able to scale it. People ask me all the time, who do you get advice from?
It wasn't just me?
No, it wasn't just you. It's more that not who I get advice from, it's who I take advice from. My wife, Rachel, much smarter than me. You know, people talk about EQ and IQ. My IQ is probably average. My EQ is off the charts. My kids, sometimes my mom. Really, I'll learn from anybody. If you could tell me a way on how to better me, please tell me. Email me, text me. I mean, that's the goal. The goal of life is to try to figure out how you could become the best version of you.
And humility to be able to listen to
Humility,
anyone.
correct. God does not like arrogance. It's important to have some degree of ego. Self-respect is very important. Very important. Again, we'll go back to that point about the giving aspect, right? I always say to people all the time, why did God give you 2 hands? He could have made you with 1 hand, right? One for you and one for the other guy. Because helping is how I get a piece of my mojo on a daily basis. And, you know, when you're involved with people, which is what it's all about, figuring out how to get the best out of people. And that's in every work aspect. Professionally, all these self-help books, how do I get the best out of my employees? Well, lead by example. That's probably the best way how to do that. And understand that every person is different. But
It's also something they say now in marketing, and you know, when you're marketing your business, that by helping other people just for the sake of helping, what you're actually promoting your business. Or they talk about content marketing and inbound marketing, and it's all based on providing information without expecting anything in return. And that's like the elite way to market right now.
right, that's correct. Another important thing in business is you don't need to know all the answers. One of the best answers is, I don't know. Or if you really want to be savvy, I'll get back to you. Because it's important to think on your feet. I figured it out. Doesn't mean I don't get stumped. I do a lot of public speaking and I'm generally prepared. But when I do public speaking in big groups, you know, you want to speak to the people, not above the people. You don't need to be the smartest guy in the room ever. You just need to know who he is. Or you need to have him working for you.
It's not about who you are, it's about who you know.
Right. Well, that is very true in business. If this is a business podcast, it's not what you know, it's who you know. That's correct.
So let's talk more about the growth of Elite Method. What are some challenges and hurdles you faced in the journey?
Many. You know, anytime you're building a business, you're dealing with parents, you're dealing with families, you're dealing with everything that comes along with that family, and you're trying to build a connection and a relationship with the child while getting the parents on board. You know, a lot of the challenges stem within the day-to-day within the children. What happens when we're guiding and advising them and then the parents are doing the opposite? That's challenging. You know, some of the kids that we deal with have a lot going on and we have to figure out, try to extract it from them. There are always different challenges because every kid comes with its own set of rules. We're always learning, but you got to stay consistent to your message. Probably the most important thing in business, stay consistent to what your message is. If you feel that you're a certain way, then you stick with that. But you need to have the courage or the fortitude to be able to be malleable. When I work with a kid sometimes and I have my own agenda and his mom texts me before that he's scared to go to sleepaway camp because he was bullied by his best friend there, I will keep that in my inbox, and when I see the kid, I'll deliver it in a certain way to have a discussion about it. And I'll use myself as an example, and then to try to bring the best out of that child and let him talk about his fear. I think talking is so important. Another crucial thing today in business, especially with customers. Figure out what they want and give it to them.
What do you mean by staying consistent with the message in business?
Whatever your message is, when we had Dube Zone, our message was strong character, strong bodies. Any big successful company out there is consistent to their message.
It's a branding.
Correct. I represent what I believe in.
So you started out with you, was it you, Rachel, and Rebecca, right?
Right. I mean, I've been involved in many different businesses over my lifetime.
With this Elite Method.
Right. Well, Elite Method, correct. Well, Elite
Evolved from Dube.
From Dube Zone, which was started in around 2010, correct. When I left the business world at 35, after my parents had sold their family business. And that's when I made a big decision as to what my next move was going to be. Did I want to be head of sales for a big company? Did I want to work for a bank?
And you chose to build your own empire. What was the reason for that?
Empire is a strong word. I appreciate the glorification of it, if that's the right verbiage. I saw a real need for healthy sports within kids where they could also build their character. And that's when, I took time to figure it out. And of course, with the support of my business partner, which was my wife, who gave me support, which was crucial, because if you don't have your wife's support, it's game over. It's already a destruction. We built it from, grassroots, from the bottom up, where I was running phys ed in 2 or 3 different schools while building the after school programs. And then that grew. And then we fine-tuned it more. And then we took over management of schools and their teams. And that grew. And then we took over doing birthday parties and events. And that eventually grew. And then the private coaching, and that grew. So there was not one particular recipe. The idea started by one of my close friends saying to me when I was making decisions as for the next move, hey, you're great with kids, you're great with sports, people really like you, you're very personable. Why don't you do this? And that's how it started. You're just seeing a finished product. And then hence, we grew that. And then the private coaching. And after Dube Zone sort of hit its peak, we had to make a decision as to what the next move was. And we saw that the most successful component was the private coaching. And then we fine-tuned that and then rebranded. So Dube is my last name. So obviously Dube Zone, I'm not getting rid of that. But then their motto was strong character, strong bodies. Then we evolved into Elite Method, which was concierge private one-on-one coaching with kids, focusing on a 5-pronged approach. And then we built that. Now, I might be the guru in what I do and realizing where it all comes from, besides the hard work and the effort. But then we were able to hire high-end coaches who were qualified, who were psychologists, who have a lot of experience with kids, who understand, who are phys ed teachers, but with an understanding of how kids work. Because I've seen hundreds of coaches over the years. So we had to figure that out. And for a lot of them, it's part-time. And then how do we get the most out of them to be able to pass on our message? Because there's so much that goes on when you're with a child, when you're with somebody one-on-one.
What were some things that hit you hard? Some revelations?
Growth mindset is important in any business, but I think the growth approach on how to grow the right way. There's some coaches who we initially hired and then decided to do their own thing and sort of circumvent us, which means you can't trust them anymore. And when we talk about business, trust is the number one most important thing. All you have is your word. And I think in business, it's so important. Like I said before, why do people buy? That because the person believes, the salesman believes. And trust is really what it's all about. So I think in business especially, but getting back to your question, the key is you want more hits than misses. Because it's tough to expect people to do it a certain way that you do it. See, Starbucks figured it out. They created a culture where they're serving a product and they have the baristas, the people that work behind. They empower people by calling their name out. They have a consistent product and they're consistent with all that they do because they found
their branding.
And branding is very, very important. You're always branding, but you've got to be true to what you do and who you are and what your brand is. And you don't want to maneuver from what you're about. So we had coaches who were, we go through our due diligence, which is important. And sometimes they look good on paper and they're not good in person.
So you must have built up over the years some sort of a vetting process and learned how to pick up the red flags. What were some of those points?
Well, some of the red flags in particular, if you had an interview with somebody at 1 o'clock and they show up at 1 o'clock, you're late if you show up at 1 o'clock. their body language, their follow-up, their follow-through. That was one very, very important thing to me in life, in any business I was involved in. Follow-up, follow-up, follow-up. Yes, in sales and in business, you want to try to take a no and turn it into a yes? Of course you do. But sometimes you've got to take that no and figure out what to do differently for the future. No doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to get the sale. No means no right now. You got to figure out how to do it bigger and better than your competitor. Or why are they saying no? So then you got to get into the psyche of a person, the psychology of a person. Why is a person saying no? What's their reasoning?
Maybe they're busy in the moment.
Right, but that's a great excuse.
Right.
I'm busy. I mean, think about the most basic thing in business and sales. You call somebody up, and I did a lot of cold calling over my years, and I loved it. There was nothing more powerful than being in front of a group of salesmen and then converting somebody over, like in Wolf of Wall Street, or in I think maybe it was Boiler Room. But a basic tip that people can take is that you call somebody up. Hi, how you doing? Good, thanks. Blah, 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 blah. You start vomiting information to them. Instead of saying, hi, this is Mike Dube. How are you doing? Good. Is this a good time? Is this a good time? 5 words which could change the dynamic of the conversation. If it's not a good time, you've then locked them up to find out a time that is better. If it is a good time, they're willing to talk to you. But just by saying those 5 words, you've now created a relationship between you and the person. Most people call and they vomit information. I've done many times where I get cold calls and I'm telling them, I'm not buying from you, but let me tell you what you can do differently in the future.
Well, you're accomplishing a few things by asking if it's a good time. Number 1, you're asking a question, which creates engagement. Number 2, you're showing them that you care about them and their time. And number 3 is just a simple tactic. It's not advantageous to speak with someone when you're trying to sell them something and it's not a good time for them.
Right. By asking that one basic question, and think about it. Go about your day and see the amount of people that call. Now, if it's somebody I speak to all the time, I won't necessarily say it. But anytime I speak to somebody for the first time, I'll always ask them, is this a good time? So you accomplish a few different things, which is a basic common sense thing. But as we know, in 2023, common sense is not common.
So when you were scaling this thing, did you find that there were, lapses and points where like you had to cross over this like canyon where you were good over here, but you wanted to get to that next level, and then there was always something that needed improvement?
I think that within myself, I'm always doing my own self-introspection, so I'm able to do that within myself. But for the coaches, they needed guidance, but their creativity is what's crucial in what they do. Their creativity with the child, their creativity in the lesson plan, how they get the most out of it, that feeling of, hey, I'm looking forward to seeing my coach. And when they leave, you have that elated feeling of, I feel good about myself. I feel accomplished. I got that endorphin rush. I got that dopamine rush, whatever it might be. And then they're a much happier person. So there are always challenges within business, but you need to identify them and then talk about them.
Over the course of time, how did you market yourself?
Well, I've always been a big self-brander in terms of what I did and the products I represent, whether it's always wearing my brand around because I'm proud of it. I don't need to wear Nikes. I'm proud of what.
Oh, it's not just for the podcast? You wear it every day?
No, 100%. I'm
Nice.
not wearing it when I'm at a restaurant going out, but I'm proud of what I built up. And we've created some really nice branding because everyone wants to be elite, and we've created a method on how to be elite. Even when I give presents to people, I put an EM sticker on it all the time. It sparks up conversation all the time. If I give somebody a bottle as a present, whatever I do, I'm always putting my sticker on it because then it creates an everlasting memory. The key is, how could you have a great enough impact in business to leave an impact where they're thinking about you when you're not there? Obviously, there's all types of merchandising things that you could put out there, a pen, a sticker, whatever it might be.
The key is to always be in the corner.
Right.
So what are some other ways that you accomplish that other than your own, physically, personally branding?
When I was in the healthcare business, when I used to send thank you letters, I always used colored envelopes. And that stuck out with people. When you're a social worker in a psych hospital and you were getting an envelope.
It's all manila.
Colored envelope, correct. Right. So the key is to be different, to think outside of the box. I think the most successful do think outside of the box. And you always need to be creative. I think it's so important in business and sales today.
How so?
Got to be creative. Because how do you differentiate yourself from the next guy?
Right.
What is it about you that differentiates you from the next guy? How do you leave an everlasting impact after you're no longer there, after you've left that sales call? What's your follow-up like afterwards?
Systems.
And I've created that within my charity, that every recipient, no matter who they are, has to send a thank you letter or a picture. Not only for social media, because obviously we're selective on what goes on social media, but for the donor. We make the donor enjoy the experience as much as the recipient. That's greatness. That's one of the things that we require in our business. Follow up, follow through.
So I have a million more questions, but unfortunately we're running out of time. So I need to be very selective. Do you ever deal with 30-year-old teenagers like me?
Yeah, well, the truth is that everybody's got a kid inside of them. How do you let that kid come out? I think that when you're confident with who you are and you know your place in the world, that kid's living the same life as that adult. I deal with adults all of the time, and I help them create the best version of them. Life coaching for kids is the same as it is for adults. But luckily, if you deal with things early enough, at a young enough age, there's a better chance that it won't have as great an impact on them as when they're adults.
The sponge becomes less absorbent.
Like public speaking, for example. I used to do public speaking when I didn't have content. Now I have content, I back it up with actions. That's very, very powerful.
What do you mean by that?
Meaning that when you're backing up who you are with substance, then your opinion's respected a lot more, opposed to somebody who just randomly says something, right? You play the long game. What do they say in golf? You drive for show, putt for dough. So the key is, how do you play the long game and the short game in all that you do? There are times in business where I've gotten no and I followed up with it. People call me up in business all the time, and they might say it's too expensive or it's too much money, or whether it's for an event or this or that. I'll say to them, no problem. You do generally in life get what you pay for. But I always will leave with it with something positive. And I think it's a very important thing in business. Leave with something positive, a positive message, a positive word, and that's what people will remember. Because many times I've given advice and insight without getting paid on it. And what comes around goes around. That's what karma is. They got that song right. Whoever comes around goes around.
What are some like really big mistakes you see people make from a coach's perspective?
Know your employee. Know their strengths and their weaknesses. Know their warning signs when you're trying to push them over the edge. Read their body language. Know what their strengths and weaknesses are. Know what they're willing to do and not willing to do. And figuring out how they can be successful in their own right. Lifting them up. Positive reinforcement. Negative reinforcement, I just don't believe works anymore.
I have a question to that, because people feel like when you give a lot of positive reinforcement, it could also have that negative effect where people, where the employee will feel like, okay, I'm a huge value, let me ask for a raise. So I believe people are afraid to give too much positive reinforcement because it will lead the employee into, maybe possibly overvaluing themselves. What are your thoughts on that?
The team mentality is one of the most important things in business. You're part of a team. Know their strengths, know what they can do, know what they can't do. I'll tell kids all the time within sports, within basketball, for example, all right, there are a lot of strong offensive players on the team, become a great defensive player. Know your role on the team. And it's important in business to know what your role is. Every person is different. I told you before that they have luggage that's coming with them that you know nothing about. And being honest. I think that shines through. Being honest with people. Can't do it, say you can't do it. You don't have it in stock, don't say you have it in stock.
Right.
So those small little catchphrases, I think, really make a big difference.
Be honest with people, and don't worry if your employee is going to want to capitalize on your compliments. Be upfront with them and, reinforce them positively. It doesn't matter if that's going to cause them to want to ask for a raise or whatever it is. The benefits of positive reinforcement outweigh the potential.
Yeah. It's just like respect. Respect is earned, not deserved. And, when you create a culture that thinks that they should be greater compensated for stuff that they don't do, that's wrong. You're sending a bad message. Be true to who you are, be true to who your business is, be consistent with what you do, and be real.
Right.
That's the key. You're building up an employee who doesn't deserve that. You're just giving them a false sense of self. When they do right, compliment them. When they do wrong, talk about it. Just like in sports, right? Player does something good, be honest with them. Let them know, recognize them. When they do wrong, let them know about it. But also try to provide a solution to a problem.
Right. Don't just say you did something wrong, but work through it with them.
Correct. How do we do it differently next time? What's another approach we could take next time? That's why people always say, keep it real.
Always keeping it real.
Always keeping it real, man.
Okay, one last question. So you went from a 3-man or 3-individual brand to hiring more and more coaches. So there's always that fear when you delegate and when you bring people in to do what you're doing, that, you know, the clientele are going to be like, okay, no, I want to work with Mike. You're the man. How do you infuse your personality into all the people that are working for you?
Good question. Thank God over the years, I have a very select clientele that I work with, and I get to be selective because I've earned that right in terms of, you know, trying to perfect my craft. We've built the business now where when it was Dube Zone, that was connected to my name. People are like, oh, I want to hire Mike for this and that. Thank God we've moved away from that. And with Elite Meth, a lot of people know about the brand, not necessarily about me, but they know that I'm the face of it. So through enough experience, enough quality hires, then that creates its own synergy. So it's not necessarily about, all right, I need to hire Mike. You'll pay a premium for that. But again, I've worked very, very hard on my craft. I like to think that I have a PhD in life. And I'm going to keep working hard and not stopping.
So anyway, Mike, this has been incredible. We're going to have to do this again because time is cutting us short and we didn't run out of topics. So thank you very much for coming on the show. And this has been the Solo to CEO podcast. Before we end, can you tell whoever's watching this how they can find you? What's the best way to get
Sure.
through to you?
I'll take a look at the camera on this one. So the best way to find me, obviously, if I'm not at my house, or I'm not involved in something trying to better the world, on Facebook, it's Mike Dube, MikeDube. On Instagram, it's at Coach Mike Dube 34. And my charity is Sharing Seats on Facebook. On Instagram, it's at Sharing Seats. And our company would be at The Elite Method, which is our private coaching company. And I thank you all for listening.